The attendance was over 57,000 people that attended SummerSlam 2024 in Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Commentators on the day were Michael Cole, Pat McAfee, and Corey Graves. And we have the Judgment Day breaking up officially this evening. We also have new champions crowned all across the card. And the King of the Ring does need to be forever linked to SummerSlam. We'll talk about that in the final thoughts. But overall, we have a major event and a major return, all in tonight's SummerSlam 2024. I'm your host, Bryan, the Hype Ballard, back at it again with the thoughts and results of everything that happened in Cleveland Browns Stadium. Let's get in. We start the show out. Triple H addresses the crowd right away. It's an outdoor arena at Cleveland Browns Stadium, and we get an outdoor WrestleMania kind of vibe. I like the outdoor settings that they're in these events, and they always feel good. SummerSlam always feels like it should be an outdoor event to me anyway. But Triple H addresses the crowd. Jelly Roll gets a performance in there, doing America the Beautiful, and then their additional song. We get The Miz hosting tonight. Some people wondered why. He's from Cleveland. That's his hometown. Of course he's going to be the host. And he's qualified. He's got hosting duties from WrestleMania and other major shows. The first matchup of the evening, we lead out with the Women's World Championship match in which Liv Morgan, the champion, was defending against a returning Rhea Ripley. The storyline here being of Dominic Mysterio. Dirty Dom, is he still with Liv Morgan, or have the weeks being built up in Rhea's absence actually meant that Dom was indeed in an affair with Liv Morgan? Morgan playing mind games very early on in this one, bailing out in the ring, making Ripley chase her around, and Rhea then fakes her out and catches her in the middle of the ring on one of these, and then trapping both of her arms, and then Rhea takes control. We get Dominic Mysterio in front of Liv, making her feel a little bit of rejection, and then putting her into the barricade for big chops. So, ultimately, we do get a point where they're going back and forth. The referee checks on, some of these girls. We then get Rhea Ripley ramming her shoulder into the turnbuckle in the matchup and dislocating it. And that was the center of the story of this matchup, was the dislocation of Rhea Ripley's arm. I did wonder at one point if that was dislocated, but I'm now starting to wonder if Rhea is able to, maybe be double jointed or pop her shoulder out, or just a very good at playing the part of the injured and selling it. But we do get Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan not holding back and going aggressively at the shoulder. So that was the story for the match. And then on the outside, we get Rhea Ripley ramming her shoulder into the announcer's desk to reset it. And then back inside, we get some right hands, a kick, a drop kick into the corner. So once Rhea did get her shoulder reset, we get the riptide reversed into a DDT, but it wasn't enough. And then we get an inverted cloverleaf applied. Ripley losing control of the match, and then Morgan fights out and slings her into the posts again. There's a cross armbar applied. Rhea Ripley keeping her hands clasped and kicking her legs to try to find out what it eventually does. Ultimately, we get a little back and forth. Fast forward later in this action, and this is where Dominic Mysterio does come into play on this one. Ultimately, we get a chair involved in the ring. We do get Rhea Ripley getting ready to just smack Liv Morgan with this chair, and Dominic Mysterio stops her pulling the chair out. But then we're thinking Dominic is on the side of Liv Morgan, but we actually get Dom being the voice of reason, saying you cannot get disqualified or you won't get the title. Rhea listens to reason. She goes back out. Later then, Dominic is involved with the chair again, sliding it seamlessly over to the center of the ring, and then distracting the referee, as Liv Morgan then ends up winning by pinfall with Oblivion on the steel chair, retaining the WWE Women's World Heavyweight Championship. Liv Morgan is still your champion at the end of this one, folks. And that's about 15 minutes of matchup. 15 minutes, 50 seconds in this one. And we then get Dominic smirking, and we get a huge embrace of Dominic and Liv after the match kissing as Rhea Ripley looks angry and staring down the two new couple. This reminded me a lot of WrestleMania with Chris Jericho and Christian and Trish Stratus back in the day. A little bit of a love triangle, if you will. If you guys remember, that one started out with a bet on who could get a date with Trish for $1 Canadian, and Jericho and Christian competed, and then Jericho ended up falling in love with Trish Stratus, but then ultimately Trish betrayed Jericho going into a relationship with Christian. And then that did end with a big stage at Mania with a big kiss at the end of the ramp, which this match here tonight did give us a little bit of reminiscence of that, with Mysterio planning a big kiss on Liv Morgan. We then get a little bit after that one, a breakdown of Damian Priest storming into the Judgment Day, locker room area, angrily demanding that to see Dom Mysterio. He grabs Finn Balor by the shoulder and then demands an answer from Finn, doesn't have one, and he looks at him and tells him they're all going to look for Dom together. So Judgment Day seemingly imploding at SummerSlam, which a lot of you guys predicted, and good job on that one. We do get into our next matchup. So the first match, a pretty good match, great storytelling, great pacing. I would say definitely Liv and Rhea got the job done in the opening match, and it does allow the chase to continue and the Judgment Day to break up. We got Bron Breakker versus Sami Zayn for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. And honestly, I'm looking at this one, and I felt like Bron should have probably won the title at the last PLE with Money in the Bank, but he did not. And there was no stipulation added to this one, except for a standard Intercontinental Championship matchup. So here we go. We get Breakker charging for a spear at the bell, but Zayn leapfrogs him. They're building up the idea of a power wrestler with some technique going against the very technical savvy Sami Zayn. Ultimately, we do get a haluva kick that is missed. Breakker talking smack at him, military press, and then Zayn slips out for a schoolboy for a 1 and a 2. Off the ropes, a lariat takes Sami off his feet, shoulder block into the corner, and the referee warning him to stop. Right hands as she pulls the corner and warns him a little bit further. We do get the new position. Off of the turnbuckle, we get a avalanche Frankensteiner, which just isn't enough to get the job done. So not the Frankensteiner, but the Breakensteiner, as the Corey Graves will tell us on the microphone. But then we do get, ultimately later, a diving bulldog countered by a blue thunder drive. So close in the corner, charging in. Bron Breakker cuts him off with the spear, and the straps are down. We're ready to get his main event championship here with the Intercontinental Championship. And Bron Breakker wins by pinfall with the spear, becoming your new Intercontinental Champion at about the 5-minute 42-second mark. This matchup was done very quickly, got the job done. I will say, though, it was a very slow kind of pace for me for being such a quick match. I was a little surprised, and I just don't know if these two just don't have the best chemistry for my liking here, but I would like to see, I want to see Bron Breakker go on with this Intercontinental Championship, and I would like to see him actually get a Goldberg-like-esque push. Maybe not to the level of being just smashing people, but I would like to see him crank up the intensity and have lots of dominant matches leading in. And we got to make the Intercontinental Championship remain relevant. We did have Gunther with his 666 days of reign being the greatest champion of all time. And then we have Sami Zayn being the underdog to take the title off of him at Mania in a short reign. But now we need another strong reign for the Intercontinental Championship to secure itself and its future into the long run. And putting on the Steiner version and putting it on the son of Rick Steiner is not a bad way to go. And I think Bron Breakker is going to be a fun champion to watch if booked correctly. Speaking of booked correctly, I want to get into the United States Championship match. Yeah! That matchup, we get a quick Stephanie McMahon in the crowd for this one shown. And then we get, ultimately, Logan Paul, the hometown boy, making his way in. A security guard walking with him that unmasks and ends up being Machine Gun Kelly from Cleveland, Ohio also. Yeah. And then joins them on the way to the ring. LA Knight arrives in Logan Paul's Prime branded Hummer, and he smashes it up, breaks the windows, and says he'll return the piece of crap to him. And then we get the championship match. LA Knight is out. He is over with the crowd. Very, very good true test to see if LA Knight is the real deal when you have a natural heel but hometown guy in Logan Paul getting booed and LA Knight getting the cheers in an area where it could honestly go the other way with a loyal Cleveland fan base. But we do get LA Knight looking very strong in this one. And I do want to say this guy's got everything that it takes to be a main eventer. And will he get his United States Championship, being his first main championship in the WWE? We're going to find out. Knight pulls out the ring bell, and right before the bell, we do get a lot of action in this one on the outside. And then ultimately we get some announcer desk being cleared, and then we get a big move by LA Knight and Logan Paul onto that. And then over and over and some breaking there. And then we get a backbreaker onto that desk, but it does not break the desk, and you know that move just hurts. So then we get a diving elbow later on, but then it takes a little bit, and then the match does get started on this one. And then we do get back forth in the ring. We get some covers for some 1 and a 2. We also get some big right hands with a steel plate. Knight kicks out. Nobody's home with a frog splash. And we get some blocked moves. Ultimately, I would say there was a sweet moment in this matchup where Logan Paul pulls off a very acrobatic move, jumping from the inside of the ring up onto the top rope, bouncing and doing a flip to the outside on LA Knight. Ultimately, we do get Paul rushing over to challenge LA, and in Machine Gun Kelly jumping the barricade towards the end of this matchup. And Knight pulls him out and then actually takes his necklace off, in which actually he ends up getting the necklace. Logan Paul gets a necklace from Machine Gun Kelly that actually has brass knucks, bringing that into the equation here. And then we look, ultimately, Knight pulls back. We get a suplex blocked with the loaded punch from him, and then we're looking for a buckshot from Logan Paul. Nice little nod there with Hangman Adam Page being in the main event AEW on Wednesday, so I felt like that was a little fun jab. But ultimately, LA Knight wins by pinfall with the BFT, becoming your new United States champion. At the 12-minute mark in this one, LA Knight, going on to be the United States champion, and the time was now on this one. Great match between these two. Logan Paul's athleticism always just shines, but losing in his hometown to LA Knight. And LA Knight will go on to have a great United States Championship run and be able to look like a nice, solid champion. And the main thing about this one is it keeps him away from Cody Rhodes. LA Knight staying away from Cody Rhodes is going to be so important right now, because we will not dethrone Cody Rhodes anytime soon. But we do want LA Knight to not lose any of the momentum that he has, that he's built up to this point in his career. So I do believe we will get a scenario someday where LA Knight does win the Royal Rumble, even maybe this year, and go on to get a main event title shot at a WrestleMania, in which he'll do the pointing to the crowd, the LA Knight, and at that part he'll point at the WrestleMania sign, making his intensity known. Hey guys, if you want to make yourself known, you like wrestling, hit that like button. Helps out my channel, also helps out your algorithm to allow you to see more wrestling content. And if you've been a subscriber to the channel, thank you so much. I appreciate interacting and commenting with each and every one of you guys. Let's get back in. So we got the Women's Championship. Now, the stipulation here is Nia Jax, being the previous Queen of the Ring winner at the Queen and King of the Ring tournament, now means that she gets a title shot at Bayley, in this case, at SummerSlam. Love that format. I'll talk about that again in the final thoughts. But Bayley ultimately comes out. Nia comes out wearing the crown. The crown doesn't look as goofy as it did back in the 90s, but it still looks pretty good. Bayley immediately working the arm in this one, hooking over the ropes, punches in the corner, shoulder block, but Jack lifts her up. Powerbomb countered into a jawbreaker, a Samoan drop. Great move for Nia Jax to do. I like the Samoan drop. It's a great, solid move. It's got the Samoan heritage to it. Good move for her. Jax is definitely pressing the attack. She chokes Bayley into the ropes. but the role model Bayley refuses and will not stay down. She keeps throwing her punches and legs. I want to make a comment too. Bayley's attire tonight, very inspired by the Macho Man Randy Savage, her favorite wrestler in the world. And you can tell there's a lot of little nods to the Macho Man Randy Savage in this one by Bayley. Not just her attire, but also in some of her moves. We get a leg drop on the apron, but Bayley rolls away, kicking Nia to the floor. We get a head of steam, splash off the steel steps, mounted punches, back inside, Jax with a gourd buster, and then up top, a diving leg drop, but nobody's there. A Bayley to belly suplex, but it does not get pulled off very well, and it's not successful. I will say, I did not like this part of the match when they tried the Bayley to belly suplex on Nia Jax. Being a power wrestler and a bigger wrestler, I view Nia Jax as the Andre the Giant of the women's division, so to speak. That's what Vince McMahon always used to call her. And I look at it as, you know, Bayley should not be able to pick up Nia Jax and slam her in that way because of the type of wrestler and build she is. I feel like, you know, that should have been a moment of weakness for Bayley, showing that she can't do that, which would have set up the move at the end of the match even stronger that Bayley would have tried to overcome that we will get. So ultimately, Nia hits a big rock bottom out of the corner, slamming and countering some of these moves of Bayley. Great move there. Bonsai drop. I know we like the avalanche, the bonsai drop. I feel like Nia sometimes hits the move well, and sometimes it just comes across as not as intense. So I don't know if that's the best move I like for her. I like the Samoan drops for her, and among other things. Bayley kicks out, and Nia is shocked at this, but ultimately we get some back and forth again. And then here's the move I talked about, that if Bayley would have failed in her Bayley to belly suplex, she gets a power bomb for a 1 and a 2, a really close near fall. And then I believe that power bomb was such a strong, she clearly had Nia up, walking with her and slamming her, and I felt like that would have been a nice, huge moment. So ultimately, we then get Tiffany Stratton running down with the briefcase off the apron. I do want to mention that Bayley, after that powerbomb, she did go to the top ropes and then ultimately did a Macho Man-like elbow drop into the canvas. And it wasn't just enough. Then we get Tiffany Stratton running down with the briefcase, but Bayley knocks her off the apron. And then a folding press on Nia for a 2 count. Off the ropes, a power bomb connects. Jax rolls through, and it's a jackknife power bomb up and in the corner. Nia Jax wins by pinfall with not just 1, but 2 bonsai drops that looked a lot better. Become your new women's champion here at SummerSlam. Another title change for the women, or another title change overall on the card. This one for the women. We do have Nia Jax moving on. And I was a little surprised to see Bayley not retain here. However, I do understand that the WWE needs almost this to happen so they can understand the strength of the King of the Ring tournament merging into SummerSlam. Overall, this matchup actually was a fun matchup to watch, and I did kind of wonder where they were going, and I didn't think, it was too bad. There was a couple things I know I mentioned I didn't care for in the match, but overall, I felt like it was told a good story and allowed us to move forward in the next evolution of things, with Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax having a feud possibly setting up in the future, knowing that Money in the Bank briefcase, Tiffy in the Bank, if you will, that will actually just keep coming into the play and into the fold eventually. Also coming into the fold, we have Seth Franklin Rollins coming out in his very, very crazy referee attire. But once he took off the robe into the ring, I noticed his shiny, as CM Punk calls them, Sabu pants. I like to think of them as the Shockmasters pants from WCW fame. Very glittery, very bright, and I felt like it would have been very Shockmaster-like to wear those kind of pants. But Rollins is very eccentric and peacocking all the way. But we get CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, and this matchup has been built up ever since WrestleMania of this year, at WrestleMania 40. But Seth Rollins, again, special guest, he gives our instructions to both competitors, and we get a bell ring. And then we get punches out the gate, and McIntyre throws Punk into the corner. Punk ducks, throws punches, and puts boots to him. And these two are just battling out because they've attacked each other in home countries, hometowns of Chicago, leaving them bloodied and battered. and also, stolen very precious items in a very cheap Temu or Dollar General type necklace, as one of the people in our Fans of Pro Wrestling chat said. I love that comment. But ultimately, we do get Seth Rollins kind of showing some favoritism in here and how he's refereeing the matchup. It did remind me a little of Undertaker, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels from previous SummerSlams. Ultimately, we get a boot up, we get a Fallen Lariat, punches from Punk, and we get a double thrust from McIntyre, a big chop to the floor, putting boots to Drew, smashing his face over the steel steps and over and over and over again. Drew presses the advantage and slaps Punk across the face, and CM gives it right back to him. We get a back fist, a knee kick to the gut. Ultimately, we get a lot going on here, but McIntyre pulls out the infamous bracelet he took from Punk and puts it on his wrist. Counting down, Punk meets him with a really crazy kick, swinging neck breaker, following with a lariat. Drew is down, and Punk goes to the top, a diving elbow into the cover, 1 and a 2. Ultimately, Punk wants the Anaconda Vice, and he gets it locked in. It's distracted. This one is kind of a back and forth street fight kind of wrestling match brawl. We do get a future shock that was blocked. We get a go to sleep, but there was no referee in this case. And ultimately, Rollins slides in from being on the outside for some reason. And ultimately, the crowd did a great job on this one, counting to 8 as Seth Rollins eventually gets to it, and then which causes him and CM Punk to get into a verbal altercation, talking about the Sabu pants and saying that he might be, he's a terrible referee and it's an easy job. It's a 1, 2, 3. And then Punk also says it may not always be about him, but it's never about Rollins. And then he's turning back over to Drew. He hits a low blow, a Claymore, and then Seth wakes up as he rolls onto the cover. And then Drew McIntyre ends up winning this one by pinfall, mostly because CM Punk was able to defeat himself in this. Drew didn't necessarily do anything incorrect in the matchup, but Punk, this storyline seemed to be more about Punk and Seth Rollins than Punk and Drew McIntyre. Trust and believe this one is not over. McIntyre does look dominant, gets the win, picks up the bracelet again, puts it on, staring Punk down, putting a foot on his chest and raising his fist high in the air. And believe me, this one is built for the future. This one is, I can see it coming down to Bad Blood in October with a Hell in a Cell stipulation. Triple threat, Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. And it also adds a little insurance in there just in case CM Punk does get injured between this time and Bad Blood, which would allow it to be a one-on-one matchup if necessary. So great booking here, and I do believe it's going to a triple threat at Bad Blood, Hell in a Cell. Then we have the other half of our King of the Ring winner, Gunther, getting his world champion shot at World Heavyweight Champion Damian Priest. Backstage, we do get Damian Priest getting ready and Finn Ballard comes up on him and admits that he can't find Dom. Priest apologizes for being out of line. Balor apologizes and says Judgment Day comes first, and if Damian changes his mind, he'll be out there to support him. Just say it. Very interesting. Now, I noticed as soon as they did this little pre-match backstage segment, I said, uh-oh, it's done for. This championship is changing hands at the expense of Damian Priest via Finn Balor. Damian Priest versus Gunther. Here we go. We get both men out. Priest hammering with him. Forearms to the corner. Gunther returning. We get a leap back forth. The ring general is doing his job ultimately. And I will say these guys had a fun matchup back and forth where Damian Priest looked really good against Gunther in this matchup. He looked like a solid champion. He had some great moves in the matchup. He had some great power moves on Gunther, while Gunther looked like the ring technician. So definitely those kind of matches. We get some very close calls. We're calling for a razor's edge at one point, but the ring general blocks that and then chops with a forearm, a duck under. We get a clutch, and Priest slings them off. We get a cyclone kill that isn't blocked eventually. Captured suplex off the ropes with a lariat. Another lariat in place. A cover for a 1 and a 2. Gunther with the boot. And Damian is hit on his knees, and he waves basically. And then a chop sends him crashing, grimacing ultimately to the mat. Finn Balor at ringside, there to help his stablemate. And we get Gunther with a wrist clutch chop that sends him into Finn, right next to Finn Balor, to soak up some support there. And then chops from the champion to get a boot. Gunther lines him up, kicks him hard in the ribs, jawing at Finn, and Priest powers up. We get a Razor's Edge that does connect. And then ultimately, Finn Balor puts Gunther's foot on the ropes when it should have been a 1, 2, and 3. And Finn Balor is looking away, smirking. Priest actually looks up and sees the replay on the Titantron, which I thought was very genius in this matchup, to know that Finn Balor just screwed him, or attempted to. He then gets very focused on Finn, and he's going after Balor while Gunther is coming from behind. He hits a setup powerbomb and a Gorgia clutch, and then ultimately the champion is fading away, and Gunther wins by referee stoppage with the clutch, becoming your new World Heavyweight Champion. Gunther won the title in this one in about the 16-minute, 39-second mark, and I do see this as a good title change. Damian Priest had his day where he cashed in, making the Money in the Bank valuable at Mania, but then ultimately having a couple good title defenses and showing why he is a legitimate main eventer and can do the Monday Night Raw Championship. But it is time. It's SummerSlam. It's time to get this championship on somebody that is ready to roll into WrestleMania and main event with it, and that is Gunther. And Gunther coming off a longest championship streak ever in the WWE history. I expect Gunther to hold this world championship in the same manner, possibly breaking the all-time streak. I know it's a short champion, but really cementing himself as the holder of championships for long, long days. Ultimately, we do have Gunther saying it's about time in a interview post-show, but we're going to get into our undisputed WWE Championship in the main event. The Awesome Truth are in the ring with The Miz. Ultimately telling us the attendance record for this Mania at Cleveland Brown Stadium is 57,791. The crowd was a little light tonight. Not that that's not a lot of people, but it does hold about 67,000 in there. And they did have, a lot of holes in the beginning. But A-Town Down comes under. They call the crowd, and then they chant Jelly Roll in the crowd because they were getting mocked. And R-Truth introduces the Rock and Roll Express as A-Town Down Under and explains that he's talking about Theory and Waller. But Jelly Roll brings in a chair to the ring, and ultimately we get a triple 5-knuckle shuffle, kind of alluding to the John Cena tour coming up here in his retirement tour. But Cody Rhodes, ultimately we do start to shift focus, but Jelly Roll getting a little help up from The Miz and R-Truth and getting his moment in the sun. And then we then get a little break, and Cody Rhodes is getting the big, long entrance coming out of his area from the back with his dog, Pharaoh, walking with him. And then he interacts with Arn Anderson. And a lot of people, to their shock, wondered how Arn Anderson, free of his AEW contract, was able to show up tonight and support Cody Rhodes in the backstage. We then get his entrance. Solo's already out in the ring with his entrance prior. And we get some circle and collar elbows. Rhodes with a side headlock to start things off. And they lock back up. And the thing I remember about a bloodline matchup is they always start slow. They go with a little interference. And then they go for the third and final act of the show, if you will, and go for the payoff. And those are all the formula for the bloodline matches. So in the first part of this matchup, there was just a lot of back and forth, feeling each other out one-on-one. They did give guys time one-on-one here with Solo and Cody, which was so important not to run to the interference yet, just to give Solo a few minutes to soak in what it's like to be in a main event of a major pay-per-view. But it did run a little slow in the beginning for me, and I was like, okay, it's time to pick up the pace a little and get to the meat of it, if you will. So we do get Rhodes bouncing back eventually after this, back and forth. We get some Samoan drops. We get some covers for a 1 and a 2. And then ultimately we get a little nod to Rikishi at one point. And then we do get a schoolboy from Cody, but he runs right into Solo. But that just wasn't enough. We get a claw grinding the champ down, and then a Samoan drop for a near fall. Tree of Woe headbutt. Very, very big signs of Umaga, the late great Umaga. And then Cody with the superplex, laying in punches. The Cody Cutter gets blocked. And then we get Tama Tonga and Tama Loa running in to beat up on Cody. And here is playing the Usos part. And then we get Kevin Owens making his return down to have Cody's back. And then we do get the numbers game. We get ultimately Owens getting beat down. But don't worry, Randy Orton is here. And you wonder if there's going to be a Cody interaction. But there's really not. He's just there to help out and lead. They chase off Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. And this gets back to the action in the ring with its Rhodes versus Solo. We get some steel steps in the ring, and we get that coming into play. Putting the steps in the corner, leaning Rhodes against them, we get a overall run, and Cody rolls away, and Solo smacks his hip right into the corner. We get an inverted face lock, and Cody gets the crossroads. He hits and connects. A second crossroads, and he's sucking wind for a third. But Jacob Fatu is here, the werewolf, the Samoan werewolf, and he breaks it up with an Atomico. Double jump moonsault, following it up, dragging Solo over for the pin, playing the Solo Sikoa mark in this bloodline. Cody kicks out, and then we get a super kick with Jacob Fatu clearing the announcer desk, setting it up, and then we get the Samoan werewolf heading to the top and splashing down through the announcer table like we've seen on SmackDown. Fatu struggling to stand, and then he leg buckles actually underneath him, and I wonder if Fatu actually hurt his leg in this matchup. We don't see too much after this. We do see a little bit, but then these two, it goes back to Cody and back to Solo. Rhodes isn't going down that easy. He does get out of some close situations, but Roman Reigns does show up with a little bit of a slightly remixed version of his song, and we get a Superman punch straight to Solo, and then he takes down with a spear, taking out Solo. He turns and he looks at Cody Rhodes, and we get a little bit of a stare down like he wants to attack Cody, but he doesn't, and he just straight up leaves. And Cody Rhodes wins by pinfall with the Crossroads retaining the World WWE Undisputed Championship at the 29-minute mark on this one. Those main event bloodline matches go a little long like that, but we did get a lot of interference runs. We did get a lot of pops from the crowd. The crowd went crazy with Roman returning. Roman's return for me fell a little short. I would have liked to seen him come out and not slowly walk to the ring, or I would have liked to see him either walk to the ring, making us wonder what he was going to do, playing a little mind game with Solo, ultimately acting like he's embracing Solo as the, trying to win the title, and then Roman really giving it to him. And I would have loved to seen a pinfall by Cody and a quick exit while Roman beat down Solo Sikoa in the middle of the ring, almost like Sami Zayn at the Royal Rumble. I would have liked to seen something escalate and elevate there. But it was a quick in and out for Roman outside of the long entrance walk, but not a bad match overall. It's not a bad match in pairing either, is our fans of ProWrestling.com. We got Ted's Talks over there. We got Wrestling World. We got a lot of great stuff. But we also got the Wrestling Fans Inside podcast, where me and my teammates do shows every Sunday with Sunday Takedown. And we'll cover this SummerSlam, I'm sure, tomorrow on the show, giving other thoughts with the team. But let's get to the final thoughts. Speaking of that, we got SummerSlam, and it did feel like the second biggest pay-per-view or PLE of the year. We got an outdoor situation, much like the Philadelphia show of Mania in the spring. And it just felt like SummerSlam always is meant to have these outdoor things, or somewhere where it plays into the summer, in the heat. We do get our King of the Ring tournament winners both winning titles at this year's SummerSlam. That is so important because this is the first year where they've said the winners of the tournament are connected to SummerSlam and get championship matches automatically. I think this needs to be linked forever. I feel like the WWE does a really good job of doing that with the Royal Rumble linked to WrestleMania, and I feel the King of the Ring does now need to be linked to SummerSlam, especially if they're going to the two-night SummerSlam format next year when SummerSlam returns. We do get a lot of stories that are moving forward. We get the Liv Morgan story, which ultimately played into the Judgment Day imploding story. Judgment Day is going to be very, very broken up. Damian Priest is on the outs. Finn Balor seems to be back in control of things. And who knows the situation with Rhea. And Roman Reigns making his big return. Like I said before, it might have been a little lackluster for me. And I would have liked to see a more beat down overall and not just a quick in and out. But those are my results and thoughts. Let me know some of yours in the corner or down below. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to head out. Guys, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. For now, it's game over.